What's up everybody? In this video, I am breaking down my entire frog fishing setup. I'm talking line, rod, reel, all the way down to the frog. You want to be a better frog fisherman? Stay tuned. This is the exact setup that I just used in my latest 24/7 video at Mississippi River, where I caught, I don't know how many pounds worth of bass to finish 18th place, and pretty much like 98% of my catches have all came off this setup. To me, the most important thing when frog fishing is your rod. And the reason for that is it dictates how well you can cast, make an accurate cast, being able to set the hook, properly driving those hooks to catch those fish, getting better hookup ratios, all of that comes from your rod. And I like to use the Abu Garcia Fantasista Premier rod. It's a 7.3 heavy. It has a fast tip to it, but it has a very, very stiff backbone. That tip allows me to make accurate casts and really put this bait where I need to, but having that backbone, that stiff backbone, allows me to drive those heavy hook sets. You know, you got two flipping hooks on that frog, so basically getting those hooks to penetrate that mouth, it takes a lot of pressure, it takes a lot of force. So this rod, for me, is my favorite frogging rod. And I know everybody can't afford the high-end dollar price points on some of these rods. For a while, if you guys have watched my older videos, I used to use the Abu Garcia Vendetta, which is like a $79 rod. And I would use the same version, a 7'3" heavy rod, and it worked great. Having a stiff enough rod is very, very critical. Finding a rod that has a soft tip and a stiff backbone, those are hard to find. A 7.3, the length for me, people is gonna vary on their height. So I may even go down to a 7-foot rod if I'm really, roll casting under a bunch of brush or trees, overhanging limbs. I may go to a 7-foot, but I like the 7.3, that extra 3 inches really makes a difference. I feel like it's what I'm comfortable with, but those attributes in a frog rod are a must. The second most important thing with this setup is your line. I use braided line, super line by Spider Wire, Stealth Smooth, and the great thing about braided line is it has zero stretch. When you pull on that fish, you are pulling in a direct line and there is zero stretch, equaling a lot better hookups. 50-pound test, about 90% of the time I'm gonna use 50-pound test. I feel like I don't break 50-pound test, and it's got a small enough diameter that I can make long casts and it manages really well. The only time that I'll go higher than that, if I'm fishing matted vegetation, I'll switch to 65-pound Spider Wire Stealth Smooth. That way, you set the hook and you're not only dragging in a 4 or 5 pound fish, but 10 pounds worth of grass. I wanna make sure that line's not gonna break. I will never go under 50-pound braid when throwing a frog, and my reasoning for that is a lot of times when you're setting a hook, there is so much force going into that hook set. When you drop below that 50-pound mark, there is a chance of breaking your line. I've done it before with 40, so I've always just gone to 50-pound. The knot that I tie with this braid is a double Palomar knot. The reason for that is so the knot doesn't slip. A regular Palomar, it may work, but I've always just got used to tying a double Palomar, leaving a long tag in, and that's gonna allow you, I've caught 10 fish on that knot before, if not more. It's not gonna break. It's a solid knot and it works every time. The great thing about this line is it casts phenomenally. It's a new braid that was brought out in the past year, and I've really fell in love with using it on my top waters because of its castability. Being able to manage that line it's super easy, and by far my favorite braid by Spider Wire. The next important thing with this setup is your reel. An 8-0-1 Abu Garcia Revo ALX, which they're introducing the new ALF, which will come out in about a month, and I'm gonna have my hands on it. It'll be my new frogging reel. The bottom line is you need to have a higher retrieve reel. I wouldn't go anything less than a 7. The only time I would go less than a 7 is if you really wanted to walk your frog side to side and not move it anywhere. That 6:4-to-1 gear ratio reel will allow you to really walk the dog and never move that bait. The amount of times that I've used a 6:4-to-1 are like maybe 1 out of the past 100 times, and the reasoning for that, one, I'm able to catch up to those fish when they blow up on it and I set the hook and jerk them out of the water. I'm able to pick up that slack. Two, an 8-0-to-1 gear ratio reel I feel like is almost the perfect frogging reel. It allows you to keep a good cadence with that frog, but also burn it back to the boat when you need to make another cast. Picks up a lot of line. It's just a great all-around reel for this application. Now, the next biggest thing with your reel is having a good drag system. The drag system on the ALX is awesome. There's no slippage. You know, it's meant to catch big fish. That's what it's for. I have my drag winched down super tight, so when I set the hook, that line is going straight to that fish and them hooks are penetrating. You know, there's a lot of times that you may have 30, 40 yards of line out and one blows up on your frog, and you got to pick up all that line. With that braid, there's no stretch, so you're able to get that hook penetration, and you want your reel to perform at that point. You cannot have it fail you, so make sure your reel has a great drag system in it. And now I know what you guys are thinking. He hasn't mentioned frog yet, and I'm gonna tell you why. It's because I don't really think the frog makes that big of a difference. I use all kinds of different hollow body frogs from different manufacturers, and really, when it all comes down to it, they all work pretty well. I have my favorites, and I'm gonna tell you guys my favorites, but more importantly than the frog is the hooks that's in the frog. Everything that I'm talking about is getting the bites, getting the fish in the boat from the time that fish blows up on it, getting in the boat. That's so important in frog fishing. There's not too many times that you go out and you're 10 for 10 on catching frog fish, but making your setup properly sound for these conditions is what makes you a good frog fisherman. It's not always the frog that you're using. So that's why the hooks are so important. You don't want a hook that is a thin wire that's going to flex out on you when you're using a heavy rod, braided line, and a reel with no drag. Something's got to give, right? Well, you don't want the hooks to give. The first thing I do when I get a frog is I change the hooks out. I put on Gamakatsu hook. They're just aftermarket hooks that I have a lot of faith in, and they are extremely well at not bending out, staying sharp, getting those fish into the boat, which is what we need. And last but not least is the actual frog. Like I said, I use all kinds of different frogs from different manufacturers. I'm not sponsored by any of them. These are just frogs that I have faith in, and they're no different than what everybody buys off the shelf. Typical frog, but there are some modifications you can make to them to trigger more bites and help work the frog better. The first thing I like to do to these frogs is I like to trim the legs up. If I'm fishing open water, around trees, cover, I'm gonna trim these frog legs from the outside working inwards towards its butt. This allows the frog to walk easier when you're using it across the water, gives it that walk the dog action with very minimal effort on your end, so you don't have to be on point all the time for that frog to be doing its job. And really, that's what triggers bites when you're using it. The second thing I like to do is I like to bend the hooks out just a little bit, so when that frog comes out of its mouth, those hooks are grabbing something at all times. That frog body has got to collapse. There's a lot of plastic there, so you want to make sure those hook points grabbing onto that fish's mouth. I hope you guys can use it. Like I said, I know you don't use all the same products as me. Finding these attributes in your setups is what's gonna make you be a better frog fisherman. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you like it, comment below, like, subscribe. I appreciate it. We're trying to keep building this channel up so I can keep providing content. So I thank you, and I'll see you next time.